everybody. Those soothing tones means that we are back again here this morning with another edition of Waiver Wire Tuesday, college football mornings brought to you by campus2canton.com. As always, I am Austin.
And it's nice to have you back, Austin.
I missed you guys last week so much as I was laying on the beach, beverage in my hand, waves rolling in. But enough about that. Let's move into some waiver wire pickups here. We're a third of the way of the season, basically at this point. So maybe your waiver wire is a little more picked over. These names, I don't feel great about a lot of them, Colin, except for these first two. I don't know how you feel about most of these.
Yeah, I think the first two are nice plays, and they're nice long-term pickups as well there, which it adds some value to them. I think some of the other guys that we're adding a little bit later on are, seniors, short-term value. Don't necessarily know if I'd advise picking them up yet, or if it's like super deep league pickups, but I like the top two.
Yeah, I like the top two here a lot. Let's stop teasing them. Let's just hop right in here. I'll take off first here. Miles Davis, running back at BYU there. He's listed as a freshman, has several years of eligibility left. We've talked a lot this offseason about how much we liked Chris Brooks, who was coming in there, taking over this lead back role from Tyler Algier. The lead running back at BYU has just been incredibly successful over the past couple of years, and a lot of that has to do just with sheer volume. Like when they pick a guy, they go with that guy. We thought it would be Brooks. He's been really disappointing this year. So enter Davis. This week was really the first week where he took over there, but he had 14 carries, 133 yards, and a touchdown. The staff seems very excited about him. He seems like he's a pretty dynamic athlete as well. BYU missing their two receivers for most of the season thus far, so they're looking for a spark wherever they can get it. I think if Davis can take this job and make it his, that makes him an insanely valuable guy, and you probably are going to get 2, 3, 4 years out of this kid. So he's a guy that I'm really targeting. Colin and I were just talking. We're in a league. Apparently, Colin, you didn't realize that waivers process before Tuesday. So I got Miles Davis in that.
Who has Monday 5 p.m. waivers? Like I'm not even thinking about waivers until Monday night.
Read your bylaws, folks. Anyway, Miles Davis, running back BYU, a guy that I think you should be targeting heavily, and that's in limited waivers or otherwise.
Yeah, I like that call there. I mean, Christopher Brooks just kind of getting phased out there. Three snaps this past week. Really seems like Miles Davis is trending upward there. Next guy, we got Jamal Banks, wide receiver from Wake Forest. He is currently 0% owned. Fantrax brought back the rostership percentage. It is just like from 1 week because they just brought it back last week, but 0% owned for Banks. He's a sophomore. He had a huge week this past week against Clemson. 6 catches, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But the last 2 weeks since Sam Hartman has been back, he's had 7 targets and 8 targets, 2 touchdowns in both games. And A.T. Perry has been a little bit disappointing in terms of overall production so far throughout the year. I mean, he's still getting some targets. He's still, on the field for a lot of snaps. So he's still like the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but he has been a little bit disappointing. Donovan Green hasn't really quite stepped up and taken over the way we thought maybe he would coming back. But past 2 weeks, Jamal Banks is really stepping up here. And this is an offense where they're going to throw the ball a lot. They can support 2 wide receivers. And Banks is a sophomore. He's coming back. Hartman can come back as well. So you can get another extra year out of these guys.
Yeah, and even if Hartman leaves, I mean, Griffiths didn't look like a bum when he filled in for him. So he might not be Sam Hartman, but I don't know that there will be a ton of drop-off there. Yeah, Banks is another guy that I'm targeting all over the place this week. I really think that he can be one of the top 2 guys there for Wake Forest. Let's talk some unlimited waivers, guys, here, Colin. And again, we've talked about this before. Churning the bottom of that roster can be extremely important, especially in these C2C leagues where you have 40, 50, sometimes even 60 roster spots, and you can kind of, those last couple guys are very expendable, but if you can hit gold on one of these guys, obviously you're going to make out pretty well doing that. Some of the guys in here, Curtis O'Rourke, quarterback at Ohio. Look, he's not a really good player. Like, I'm not here to sell you on Curtis O'Rourke, the future NFL star, even Curtis O'Rourke, like the above average college quarterback, but we don't really care about like actual skill. We care about just how they do for fantasy. And he's been pretty dang good this year. He had 537 yards and 4 touchdowns and some yardage on the ground there as well this past game. They played Iowa State, Penn State at a conference, but all the tough part of their schedule is now over. They're heading into the MAC. Their schedule here coming up, guys. I mean, it's Kent State, Akron, Western Michigan, Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Buffalo. Like, this is the heart of the schedule. This is when these MAC teams really start to feast. O'Rourke, I think, can hit some big weeks here. He might not be a guy that I want to start every week, but certainly a nice bye week filler, especially when you got some guys, CJ Stroud has a bye week, Bryce Young has a bye week, some of these guys. So Curtis O'Rourke, definitely worth kind of, a fifth, sixth, seventh quarterback option on your rosters.
Yeah, and he's listed as a junior, so he has another year. This is not a guy who's going to go pro. Yeah. And then in the 2 games that weren't against Iowa State or Penn State, he had 48 and 59 fantasy points. So, the dual threat ability, action schedule, I think this is a nice deep league pickup. Yeah. Next guy we have on the list, DeCorian Clark, wide receiver for UTSA. He's a little bit higher owned. He's about 20% owned, according to Fantrax. He is also a senior, which, hurts a little bit there. But last week, 9 catches, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's got 39 targets on the year, double-digit targets in every single game except the game where they played Texas. He's got 6 touchdowns on the year as well, scoring at least once in every single game except against Texas. 25, 22, 10 fantasy points against Texas, and then 48 fantasy points so far this year. So, UTSA is supporting 2 wide receivers there because Zachary Franklin is still, obviously a big name there as well. But Clark is getting some run too. And, if you're in the need of one more wide receiver, one more flex spot in your league, and it's a deep league or unlimited pickups, I like DeCorian Clark.
Yeah, and I like that you left a Penn State guy here for me for last, Colin. How very nice of you. So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not sure, unless I just have some serious problems at tight end, I'm probably not making this move. Like, if I had Tanner Arkin, who didn't do anything this year, and I have Luke Musgrave, who's been out with injury, and I have CJ Donaldson, and my teammates took his tight end eligibility away because they're jerks, then that's when I start considering a guy like Brenton Strange, tight end at Penn State there, 13% rostered, according to Fantrax here. 5 catches, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. He has these games where he kind of, does some things you think, is he the next Penn State tight end? Like, not Theo Johnson, and then he kind of disappears for a little while. So that's why I'm a little hesitant on him. But he does have, a decent chunk of targets here the past couple weeks, 7 and 5. He's a very athletic kid. He's not that much worse of an athlete than Theo Johnson, who we talk about all the time. So, again, not a guy unless I have like 2 tight ends or I'm just really hurting at tight end that I'm making a move for. But if I have unlimited pickups and I really, really need help there, then sure, I'm willing to jump in a little bit here on Brenton Strange. That's the nice thing I'll say about Penn State on this show ever.
I think with Strange, too, I mean, he's 6'3", 246 pounds, so a little bit small, but not too bad in terms of NFL size there, too. So I think he could have he could land on a roster at the NFL level there. Watch list players, just players that we're not adding yet, but keep an eye on them, especially as some people's schedule starts to lighten up here, and you do start getting into some bye weeks. First player up, Tyler Scott, wide receiver for Cincinnati. He's 1% owned according to Fantrax there. He is a junior too, which does help. I don't see him going pro after this year. I think you'll get 2 years from him. But he had a huge week this past week, 10 catches, 185 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has 37 targets through 4 games. So he's getting used. They are throwing to him. He's back-to-back 100-yard games, games of 12, 13, 26, and 46 fantasy points. Cincinnati's passing offense has been a little bit better than what we would have expected with Ben Bryant under center. Maybe he's not quite as bad as we thought he was. I still don't think he's good, but it looks like he's going to be able to support Tyler Scott. He's a player that I'm keeping an eye on here. Not ready to pick him up yet, but he's making some noise.
We're trying to figure out who the next wide receivers are at BYU. We've played that game a little bit here across our different shows this season. Keanu Hill certainly has a shout to be that guy against Wyoming this past game. 5 catches, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. wasn't particularly stellar before that. Like he 4 for 45, 4 for 57, and 1 for 21. So he had this big blow up game. Certainly worth monitoring. Can he do this again? Sounds like Puka Nacua is kind of like week to week. So I'm assuming that eventually he's going to be back. Does that nerf, whoever else, Gunnar Romney, if he returns, or whoever wants to step in there? I don't really know. But certainly, a guy hit that little star icon next to his name and give him a game or two. And BYU's schedule, we talked about this at the beginning of the year, and they've navigated some difficult games, but they still have quite a few difficult games as well. Baylor, Oregon crossed off the list. They have Notre Dame. They have somebody else as well. I forget. So I mean, it's not a cupcake like a MAC team might be. They took. If you're an independent, you're supposed to like not schedule all these. I don't know. They missed.
They didn't get the memo.
But,
yeah.
Yeah. So Keanu Hill, a name that I'm watching.
The next name that I'm keeping an eye on here is wide receiver for Coastal Carolina, Jared Brown. About 5% owned there on Fantrax. He's a freshman. We thought DeAndre Coleman was going to be the freshman to kind of break out here, but Jared Brown has been making a little bit of noise here early in the year. This past game, 5 catches, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So really a breakout game here. He does have 17 targets on the year, 14 catches, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns total. Starting to make a little bit of noise. I think he's just a watch list kind of guy. But Sam Pinckney, the guy who's kind of been operating as the lead wide receiver there this year, he's a senior. So they're going to be looking for somebody to step in and fill that role next year. It's looking like that could be Jared Brown. So keep an eye on him. Maybe a late season pickup kind of a guy.
In our league that we said had the waivers run early, I picked him up too. So you're welcome.
Sniping all these guys.
I didn't go after Sean Chevers, though, here, running back from Indiana. If you can have him, I think he might be available.
Oh, thanks.
19 for 79 last week. I had a touchdown through the air as well. He's been getting the touches. The thing about Indiana is they're just not horribly efficient running the ball. That's really not how the team's set up. They're basically a pass funnel to Cam Camper and DJ Matthews. But Shivers could be the guy there. I mean, starting running backs, you have start having some guys go down could be interesting. I'm not adding him, but I do think he's worth a watch list and see what he does over the next few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, most of this list here was wide receivers, so got to throw in another running back here. Shivers is a senior, so not a long-term play either. Not a guy I'm picking up, but like you said, he's getting the touches, so worth keeping an eye on. Last guy here that I have is Devonte Walker, wide receiver for Kent State. This is the Nate Marquis special. He's 1% owned there on Fantrax. He's a sophomore. He's averaging 5 targets per game. So he's getting, some looks here. Kent State's about to get into action play too. So that schedule is going to get a whole lot lighter because they have played a murderer's row early in the schedule here. You want to talk about BYU not scheduling cupcakes. I mean, Kent State, I get that they are the most teams cupcakes, but man, this is
gotta make that money.
They have played Washington, Oklahoma, and Georgia. He does have and Devonte Walker does have a touchdown in every single game except the game against Oklahoma. So, and that includes their easier matchup against, I believe it was Long Island. But Devonte Walker looking like the number 2 option in that offense there behind Cephas. And like I said, once they get into action play, they can explode.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us this week, guys. Make sure to tune in every morning here for our shows and across everything else on the network here. Until next time, guys, I am Austin.
And this is Colin.
And have a good one.